Well, hello, everybody. Again, welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs, and we are streaming story after story about this new economy and how people are dealing with it. That's what we want to do. We want people to be aware of what's going on and what successes are working and what tactics may not be working. Our next guest, Carla Small, CEO of EarlyBird Education. Wow, the early bird catches the worm, I guess, right?
That's right.
So,
Nice to,
I'm sorry. Tell us about early bird education.
yeah,
E,
absolutely.
EBE.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me and thanks for your interest in EarlyBird. So EarlyBird is a technology platform that predicts whether or not a child will have issues with learning to read, issues like dyslexia. And it does this in a window that's early on. And that's very important because we're optimizing that window of brain development where it's easiest to learn to read. And so we're doing this in children even before they learn to read, as young as 4 years of age.
Oh,
And
wow.
then we provide a tech platform that provides the tools and the resources to help teachers and parents and tutors and pediatricians who are working with them to get them back on track. And this is really has huge societal impacts as well. So today, unfortunately, in the United States, 2/3 of our children in 4th grade are not reading on grade level. And as you probably know, this creates a much higher incidence of mental health issues going on down the road. So for example, these are the kids that we all know were diagnosed or labeled as lazy or stupid when they were young, and they go on to develop depression and anxiety and can lead to real self-esteem issues. So getting to these children early is very important, and we're excited to be able to help these kids earlier.
Well, I don't have the psychologist here who tested me when I was in early grades, but I think I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was young.
Is that right?
And I tell people that from 3rd grade on, I used to get on a bus. This was in Montreal. Every day I'd leave school twice a week, not every day, and I would get on a bus and I would go across the city all alone and go to a tutor and who would work with me cognitively to develop different types of reading and writing skills, which I
Wow.
really didn't focus in on diligently because I wanted to play all the time. But today, I would say that I read more than most people. I've disciplined myself to read. I write more than almost anyone I know daily. I can read faster than most people if I have to.
Wow.
And I consider reading and writing a learned skill that anyone can learn as long as you have the proper teaching. You
That's
know, it's,
right. That's exactly right, Jeff. It's interesting. The data shows that especially if you can intervene early. So, and I think this might be what happened with you, and you were fortunate to have a great learning guardian somewhere in your life who paid
I did.
attention to this. A child, the equivalency of intervening with a kindergartner, say, for 30 minutes a day, and the data shows that you can get 90% of children to average reading, even the most challenged children, with the right interventions early on. But sadly, a lot of times what we do in schools is we wait. A teacher may say, oh, well, he'll be fine next year. We pass them on to the next grade and sort of watch and wait. And in fact, the Dr. Nadine Gabb, who is the scientist behind the EarlyBird innovation, calls it the wait to fail paradigm. So what we do is we sort of repeatedly ask that a child fail to learn to read, and then we finally intervene in 3rd or 4th grade. But that 30 minutes becomes 2.5 hours a day when they're in 3rd or 4th grade, the equivalent intervention. So it's really important to get them early. You can actually, in some cases, you can eliminate the future diagnosis of dyslexia by getting to them early and really making a difference. This has huge downstream environmental and economic costs for society and obviously for the child individually for self-esteem. And reading is a fundamental right. We learn to read and then we read to learn. And for those who don't make that transition, life is really hard. They don't earn as much. They're overrepresented in the judicial system. It's really a tragedy that we have this going on. So we're excited with this intervention. And the great thing about EarlyBird is it's very easy to administer. It's a 20 to 30 minute game. It's a tablet-based game that children enjoy playing. And then it generates a risk and reading profile for that child that is very meaningful for their teachers. And then we provide the tools and resources to help help
Do you
learning
think,
guardians get them back on track.
usually I try to keep my opinions out of these interviews, and I have some definite opinions. I grew up, learning from my mother that, the British had an interesting school system because everybody read heavily in England. Everybody read Shakespeare. You saw people on park benches reading Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Can you teach a dyslexic to love to read?
Yes. So it's interesting that, much like you were saying, you can teach reading, but the interesting thing is you actually have to teach reading. So you can speak in front of a child and do nothing, and a child will learn to read. They'll copy you and they'll learn how to read. But the brain is not necessarily wired for reading. It's a later development in evolution's time, if you will. And so what we need to do is be mindful about the instruction for reading. And that's what we're pointing to. So we point to the resources that help someone work with a child where they are at the level they are to give that instruction. So a few kids, if you just read repeatedly will pick it up. But a good chunk of the children really need that purposeful instruction, and the earlier the better for making a huge impact.
So I'm going to ask you the opposite end of the question, since you're the expert and I'm not. Can you be someone who loses their reading skills due to life experiences during life and develop dyslexia late in life, and then you still have to go learn to read again?
That I haven't heard of. So I'm not a brain scientist, so I can't answer officially from that realm, but dyslexia is an inherited brain disability, basically.
And I'll tell you why. A lot of entrepreneurs that I've worked with, and I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs in my firm, they went to school, they went to university, a lot of them went to graduate school, and they haven't read in 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
They haven't read books, and they develop a sort of what I consider to be entrepreneurial ADD. They're very good at multitasking.
Interesting.
But they really are not as good anymore at focusing on one thing and staying patient enough to read. So I'm wondering what's the cause and effect that's sort of creating that, because I'd like to bring them back to reading. What I have to do a lot of times is get them to watch movies.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think that's a little bit about our culture today, right? Everything's in shorter snippets of information and the attention span is gone. But, dyslexia is an inherited disorder. So if you have dyslexia in your family, your children, your siblings, they have a 50% chance of having it. That's why it's also important to get to these children early, because we should be able to identify it and address it before it becomes an issue for that child growing into an adult and facing what you're saying, the issues of not enjoying reading.
So Carla, do you only work with little children, or do you work with all ages? Someone who hasn't dealt with it for many years.
Yeah, so we're all about optimizing the early stages of learning. So the tech platform of EarlyBird is designed for children. Right now we're working with kindergartners. Ultimately we'll be pre-kindergarten through second grade. That's the real hypothesis here, is that we don't have enough focus on getting to them early when you can actually obviate the downstream costs of not knowing how to read. So we are not working with adults. There are plenty of resources out there, obviously, for adults who are interested in improving their reading skills. There's less going on in this very early child stage.
So who retains you? The parent, the school system, the social worker, the doctor, or all of the above?
Exactly. So this could be used by anyone. We're selling this into schools because that's where children are, and that's where the act of, actively helping children learn to read is most often happening. But, sort of like your story, Jeff, my youngest child was diagnosed with dyslexia when he was in second grade. So it's a very compelling initiative for me. Because we have it in the family and I knew that, I could have told you when he was 3. And that was a 5-year journey where I was on my own, really trying to figure out what's the best tutor. Do I need a test? What kind of test do I need? And it's really a very complex journey to navigate, and hard, and it can be expensive. The average family with a child with dyslexia spends $10,000 across 5 years trying to help that child learn to read, and there are many that are spending that in a year. And so we also see the value with EarlyBird of helping people navigate that journey, get the resources, the right resources to their child early so they can really optimize that child's learning situation, really transform their trajectory of learning. So we're also going to be talking to and selling to consumers, but we're a small company, so we're doing a lot of this through partnerships wherever we can.
So I have one more question because time is short on Radio Entrepreneurs and like everything in life. But is it do dyslexics on average, because I know nothing's 100%, have more trouble with standardized tests than other people?
Yeah, I mean, everything's hard if you have troubles with reading, right? Even math. I mean, there's so many word problems nowadays that you may be a whiz at math, but if you can't figure out what the problem being presented to you is, it's hard. So, again, I can't or wouldn't say in total, but I know even from my personal experience with my son, sometimes what's expected of them in a timed session, like some of these standardized tests, can be challenging. But again, if we get to them early and help them learn to read, this shouldn't have to happen.
Well, you made your point thoroughly. Thank you very much. And
Yeah,
I find the topic very interesting because to me, education is what creates a great society, and
yeah,
it makes us better and more competitive. So I'm a big fan of education. It
totally
all starts
agree.
from strong roots, and you don't get strong trees and plants unless you build the roots. And so um,
Totally agree.
I simplify things, and I really sort of believe education. And Boston should be the model for that. Education is what made the city, I think, great. But Carla,
Absolutely. And it's evidence-based coming out of Boston Children's Hospital. I'm really excited about the ability to bring this to children across the nation.
good. So if somebody wants to connect with Early Bird Education and connect with
Yeah,
you, how would they do that?
yeah. So info@earlybirdeducation.com. We'd love to hear from you. We're in the midst of a fundraise which is going really well despite COVID, and we'd love to hear from anyone.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being on the show, and we want you to have continued success. It's good for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Right. And remind everybody, this is Radio Entrepreneurs, and that was Carla Small, CEO of Early Bird Education. We will be right back with more stories.